Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, do you want to manage your TSP like a pro? Do you want to get the most out of the TSP so that you can have the retirement that you want? Well, if so, you're in the right place. Today, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how you can get the most out of your TSP. And there's some things to think about when you are working, and there's very different things to think about when you are retired. Let me put it like this. When you're working and saving, that takes certain skills and certain things. It's like climbing Mount Everest. There's certain dangers and things you got to watch out for. But in retirement, it's like coming down off of Mount Everest. And did you know that actually more people die coming down off Mount Everest than they do going up? There's dangers and perils with that as well. So you have to be cognizant of both sides for you to get the most out of it. So let's talk about, while working, what are the biggest things to do so that you can manage the TSP like a pro. Now, this one probably gets overlooked sometimes. Sometimes when we think about picking the right funds and making sure you're getting the most out of that, like which funds to be in, we forget about one of the most important pieces, which is how much are you saving? I was talking to a couple not long ago, and they were talking about their investment strategy and their plans for investing throughout their career. And I realized, though, that they weren't saving very much at all, maybe 5% of their salary, which is a good start if that's all you can do. But over time, especially if you're a late starter, you probably need to be saving more. Now, there's no perfect amount that you have to be saving that will guarantee you have a great retirement. Basically, the sooner you start in your career and get serious about saving, the less you'll have to save near the end, right? But if you started late, you're going to have to save a really healthy chunk of your income near the end if you want to catch up at all, okay? That's number one, is how much are you saving and can you do more? Can you do more? Once you've got that in place, you're saving a good amount. The next piece is, are you in the right fund? Because even if you save a bunch, but you're not in the right funds, your money just isn't going to grow very fast. For example, the G fund will keep up with inflation barely, and some years not even that, right? So if you're in the G fund, even if you're saving a bunch, your money just going to get eaten away by inflation. Now, I'm not saying the G fund is always bad. Actually, in retirement, there's a place for the G fund, but we almost never want to invest only in the G fund. We generally want a nice balance between various different funds, even in retirement. So when it comes to picking which funds, let me just give you a crash course on investing in the TSP. And of course, while I am a financial planner, I am not your financial planner, at least probably not most of you, okay? And this is just for educational purposes only. I don't know all the pieces of your situation personally, and so just take this with a grain of salt, okay? So here's some thoughts. First, the C fund, S fund, and I fund, those are the stock-based funds. These are the funds that will tend to grow more over time, but they're going to be more volatile in the short term. So any money you don't need for a while, you don't plan on needing for at least 5+ years, that money may be appropriate to have in the C fund, okay? Or the S fund, the I fund, those sorts of funds. If you don't need money for a while, then having money in long-term investments can make sense. But if you need money soon, not B, I don't know why I put B, G and F. The G fund and F fund are the more conservative funds. These are the bond-based funds, and these are great for more stability. They're not going to grow much over time after inflation, but they're going to be a lot more stable. So any money you need relatively soon, again, it's my opinion, should be in something like the G or F fund. And so as a general rule of thumb, how I personally invest is, if you've got a lot of time between now and retirement, you probably want to focus on the CS&I to get growth because you don't need the money for a while. However, as you approach retirement, you're going to want to have more and more G and F. But again, even at retirement, it's rare that people want the majority of their money in G and F. You just need a balance. Because let me give you an example. Let's say you're retiring at 60 and you want to start drawing from your investments right away at 60. Some people say, well, I'm going to start drawing from it right away, so don't I need all my money in the G and F fund? And it's like, well, do you need all your money in the next, let's say, 5 to 8 years? Are you going to spend all your TSP between 60 and 68? If the answer is yes, then you probably might need all of it in the G and F. But if the answer is no, you want your money to last your entire retirement, then you're going to want to balance. You're going to want to balance. Our rule of thumb, again, is any money you're planning to withdraw and actually spend should be here in the GNF. And even retirement, most people aren't planning to spend all their money in the next 5 to 8 years. So that's a rule of thumb to follow when it comes to picking the funds. And while working, another huge one is whether you want to do traditional or Roth. Now, I've got whole videos on the main differences, but this is just a core decision. Do you want to pay the taxes now and do the Roth, or do you want to pay the taxes later and do traditional? That's the decision. We don't know if tax rates are going to go up. I don't know exactly what income you're going to have personally in retirement. So there's a lot of factors when making this decision, but the core of it is, when do you want to pay taxes, now or later? That's the question, okay? If you want to pay them later, do traditional. You'll get a tax break now, but when the money comes out, you pay taxes. If you want to pay the taxes now, but never have to worry about them later, you do Roth. There's pros and cons. You got to make the call. I've got whole videos on some of the key factors to consider. Now, what about in retirement? You've made it to the top of Mount Everest. What do you do in retirement? What are the biggest things to consider? Well, first, investing. The funds you use in retirement is massively important. Because some people think, hey, I'm retired now. I'm done investing, right? I'm done with that game. And the answer is no. You're only halfway there. Retirement, hopefully for you, is a long period of time. You need to stay invested, like we talked about, based on your timeline of when you're going to be spending your money. Now, withdrawals. Withdrawals is key. If you do your withdrawals wrong or in a way that's just not very tax efficient, you will end up with way less money, and the IRS will end up with way more money if you do things in a way that just doesn't make any sense tax-wise. So here's a couple things. When it comes to withdrawals, there's two factors to consider. Number one, are you taking out too much that your money just can't support that over time? For example, if you have, I'm going to make these numbers super simple. If you have $100,000 in your TSP and you take $50,000 out a year, even if you got a lot of growth on your money, it would only last maybe 2-3 years, right? Because you're simply taking too much out. So number one, take a reasonable withdrawal out if your goal is to have a supplement to your income. A good rule of thumb, at least for planning purposes, is what they call the 4% rule. Okay, I've got whole videos on the 4% rule, but in a nutshell, what it says is, hey, year one, you can take out 4% of your money. So if you have $1 million, that's $40,000. If you have $500,000, that's $20,000. If you have $2 million, that's $80,000. You take 4% of whatever you have, and year one, that's what you take out. Year two, you take out year one's amount, okay, and you increase it by inflation. So if year one was, let's say, $40,000, year two might be $41,000 if inflation was whatever it was, right? So you can increase that throughout time. And that's what the 4% rule says. So while this isn't perfect, and there's other strategies out there, this is a great rule of thumb, at least for planning purposes, to say, hey, how much can your money really realistically provide for you throughout retirement? If you need to take out 7% to make your plan work, that would make me very nervous, okay? 4% is a good rule of thumb. Now, here, okay, and I guess we already talked about this. I kind of grouped these up together. Basically, choosing how you withdraw. Let me actually do an example here. Some people don't really think about how their withdrawals impact their taxes, but let me give you an example. We live of course, in the United States of America, and here in the U.S., we live in a progressive tax system, which means the more income you make, the higher percentage of that income goes to taxes. So if you make $40,000 a year, you may pay overall 7% in taxes. If you make $1 million a year, you may pay 40% overall in taxes. That's how it works, right? The more you make, the higher percentage of it goes to taxes. So let me do an example. Let's say you have $1 million. If you took that entire $1 million out in a single year, your taxable income for that 1 year would be $1 million plus whatever income you would have. That would put you into a massively higher tax bracket, and the percentage of that million that would go to taxes would be huge. Let's say 40%, right? However, if you, instead of doing it all at once, you spread it out over time, so that instead of one big spike in income, it was more smooth, maybe that'll keep you down into the 12% bracket or 22% bracket. Much, much lower than, let's say, 40, right? And so when and how you take withdrawals matters. Hopefully you take them in a way to keep yourself in lower tax brackets. I say this all the time in all my videos. You don't want huge spikes in retirement if you can help it when it comes to pulling from your TSP. Sometimes it's worth doing, I get that. But if you can help it, try to avoid big spikes in income. So these are some of the biggest things so that you can manage your TSP and invest your TSP like a pro to get the most out of it, so you're not just giving extra money away to the IRS that you really don't need to, and that you can actually get the growth you need to retire confident. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.